What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Will Motivation back again with another quick video to address a recent video that I just posted um, a couple of days ago about an unfortunate incident that I had at a Toyota dealership in North Carolina. A lot of you guys watched the video, a lot of you guys commented on the video, and really let me know how you felt about that situation. And first of all, I appreciate all of the support and I appreciate all of the positivity and all of the advice. I appreciate all of that. But what I wanted to address in this video is my thoughts on if I felt that what happened to me at that Toyota dealership. In case you didn't see the video, what happened was I was denied um, the ability to purchase a Toyota Supra that I flew in to pick up after negotiating the price, after them running my credit and me submitting a credit application, me offering to pay cash before I traveled. After all of that, I got to the dealership and I was turned away. I basically went home empty handed. And the reason was due to their fraud prevention process. And that was the reason why I couldn't buy the car. So this whole fraud thing, I felt like was not handled properly by the dealership. If they had a fraud process, they should have handled it before I even traveled to the dealership to pick up the car. That was the first time something like that has ever happened to me with me going to pick up a vehicle. And I've picked up um, over 100 cars at this point. I put 92 in the video, but 92 is when I started tracking and keeping track of the cars that I was buying on my computer, my folders or whatever. But I bought cars before that. So it's well over 100 cars at this point. And that was the first time that something like that had happened. And I don't like wasting my time, so I made the video. But my intention with the video, let me get my intention clear on why I made that video. Yes, I was upset and I expressed my frustration by making a video, but my intention was actually to help everybody that watched the video on both sides. So if the dealership watched the video or the dealership got wind of the video through people leaving them reviews or commenting or whatever, or reaching out to them or whatever, my intent is that they fix their process so that other customers don't have to experience what I experienced, right? And then for the other side, flip side of it, the other reason why I did the video was for all of the customers out there that want to know what's going on, know what to look out for, not only with that dealership, but in general. If you go through something like this, make sure to get stuff understood before you fly out. And then hopefully if another customer goes to that dealership, another customer will not have to deal with what I dealt with. So basically I took one for the team. Now I want to straighten out on this video the question about racism and discrimination and my thoughts on if that had anything to do with me not being able to buy the car from that dealership. And then also there were a lot of people that were saying that they sold the car from under me. And I'll give you my thoughts on that after we address the racism thing. All right, so let's talk about the racism. Do I think, because I don't know for a fact if racism had anything to do with it. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments, but I'll tell you what I think and why I think that. All right, so now, first of all, let me say I am somebody that has experienced racism and discrimination before in this country in various situations. To two come to mind. One is uh, I went to jail one time, and it was for racism or discrimination from the police department in Bexley, Ohio, which is like a small suburb within the city of Columbus that has their own police department history of racism. They stopped me after I left work after midnight, and I was 17 years old, so it was after curfew. And I happened to be with some people that they didn't like to see me with in their neighborhood, giving them a ride home, and they took me to jail. And the reason I knew it was racism for a fact is how they treated those people I was with, who were also underage, and then how they treated me. They put me in a jail cell, and they let these the two white girls I was with that I was taking home after work. They let them make phone calls and call their parents in the office at the police department. And they took me and threw me in a jail cell. Didn't give me a phone call or anything. So I know what racism is, and I know what discrimination is. I've experienced that. In this case with the dealership, do I think it was racism? My short answer to that is no, I don't think it was racially motivated. I think they actually wanted to sell me the car in the first place. But and here's what happened with the fraud process. Here's where their process broke. Their process broke when they have something called OFAC or some system that they use. That system was asking me questions. Like, they printed out this questionnaire, and it had like 5 questions on it, and they were asking me stuff about my background that I guess whatever system they use tries to find things about your background and history that either on your credit report or somewhere else, I guess. And then they try to match that up with you and your answer to see if it matches up with what they have in their system. I did this thing about 7 times, and I've done these type of things before and never had an issue. But this, for some reason, on this day and this time when I was submitting my answers, it kept coming back as wrong. So, but I know I was answering the questions correctly. So I don't know if it has something to do with me having a new ID in Florida, because all of these questions about Florida started coming up, and my dad has the same name. So I told him maybe it's because my dad has the same name, and it's cross-referencing stuff off of my dad, his history or credit report. And that's happened before in the past as well. My grandmother's name was coming up, and that's like, I don't think there's anything associated with me and my grandmother, how my grandmother's name would be associated with me at all. So something was going on with that system. It wasn't working. And so I guess they got spooked, and they said that if I couldn't pass the test, that I wouldn't get the car, and that was that. So I was like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, because I bought over 100 cars before, and so then I'm like, okay, well, maybe this is just a misunderstanding. I have my real ID. You guys already have a copy of it. You can go make another copy of it. Gave them my real ID. I already had insurance set up. I called Progressive, got my insurance, gave it to them. Then, because I travel, and I travel so much, every time I travel with my passport. So I said, here, I have my passport. I gave them a copy of my passport. I have my passport with all my stamps in it and everything right there with my picture and everything. I also had, I happen to have my social security card from 1970s. Like, when I was a little kid and I first got a social security card, it might have been the 1980s, I'm not sure. But I had the original social security card with me because I just kept it forever. And they asked me if I had it, and I did, which normally people don't have that. But I had it because when I got my Florida ID, when I would do stuff in Ohio for my the cars and stuff that I own in Ohio, they started asking me for my social security card. So I started carrying it. So I had that as well. I gave them all of that ID. They asked me for a copy of the deed to my house in Florida. I happen to have that as well because I just got a certified copy and gave them a copy of that. They asked for insurance on my house in Florida. I had a copy of that. I gave them that. So for me, because that OFAC thing and that questionnaire thing didn't work, they should have had a backup process, especially with me coming in person to buy the car. Like usually when you come in person, that reduces the risk of fraud because it's not like somebody calling from Nigeria or whatever country. And I shouldn't say Nigeria, but it reduces the risk of fraud because I'm in person. You can match my ID with my face and everything. You can ask me some questions. You can get a feel. That's where this gray area comes in because after I gave them all of my ID and everything, and they still didn't want to give me the car, and then I asked them, well, if I paid cash, would this have even happened? And then they started kind of stuttering and said, well, yeah, you still got to go through OFAC or something like that. And that didn't make sense to me. So at that point, I started to think maybe they did think I was a scammer or like I was defrauding them because they had enough information to make a good decision. The people that were there at the dealership were saying that they had to get approval from their corporate office or something like that. But I was waiting there for 5 hours. That's where I got pissed. I was waiting there for 5 hours. So you can't figure that shit out in 5 hours. I'm getting mad thinking about it. So excuse my language. But you can't figure that out in 5 hours. Customers don't deserve that. Like I shouldn't have been there in the first place. You should they should have took one on the chin. For me to fly out there like that with all of my proper documentation, somebody should have stepped up and said, you know what? This is obviously legitimate. They could have asked me to prove I am just to give them a warm fuzzy. I could have showed them my YouTube channel. I could have showed them all kind of stuff. So they could have been like, yeah, this is definitely the person. But they didn't really go there. So that's where it kind of gets gray. And you have the human factor that comes in where they're looking, and maybe because I failed that OFAC, and I don't know how I failed because I am who I say I am, and I know my history and my record and stuff on my credit. So I don't know how that didn't work, but it didn't work, right? So they should have a backup process for me that came in person, had all my ID in order, everything, where they could have just said, okay, this is obviously legit. Give him the keys to the car, let him go about his merry way. But that's not what happened. And that's where it gets a little bit gray, where the human factor comes in. But still, I got a warm fuzzy when I went to the dealership because the dealership was very diverse. Now, if the dealership was not diverse, I would have been like, maybe this is some racist type stuff. Then I would have maybe thought that. But the fact that the main guy that it seemed like, I don't know if he was the GM or what, but he seemed like he was in charge. He was Indian. My salesperson was Asian. And there was all kind of black people walking around working at the dealership, like a whole bunch, and all like in the service department at the desk doing this, and somebody looked like their sales doing that. So there was like a lot of diversity there. And there were white people there as well working at the dealership. So I didn't get the feeling that it was like a racist business. Because of that diversity that they had, because you would think if they were racist, they wouldn't be hiring like having a diverse workforce. But there is a human factor that I wouldn't call racism. It'd just be like maybe like you profile a person, and I don't want to say like profiling like the police profiling, but you look at a person and you get a feel for how they look, and you have your own biases that come in. No matter, you could even be a black person looking at another black person, you could have a bias against them because of what you think. So I think some of that could have crept in. But I don't want to say that's racism. And here's the other thing. My intention with doing that video was not to like put these guys out of business or give them like make them lose $1 million or whatever. That wasn't my intention. My intention was for them to fix their process and do the right thing in the future for the next person that comes behind me and they want to buy a car and they don't get treated like that. That's really my intention. So that's my answer on the whole racism thing. I don't want to call them racist. I don't want to say it was like discrimination. I'm not going to like go find a lawyer or something like that about this situation. The worst thing about it for me is I wasted a day of my time where I had a plan They lost out because I would have made a video shouting out their dealership for selling me the car, like I always do. But so they lost out. They didn't know I was a YouTuber though, and I'm kind of glad they didn't because I didn't want them to treat me differently. But that's my spin, or that's my take on, was it racist or not. And then as far as if they sold the car from under me, no, I don't think they did that either. When I got there, they had a temp tag for me. We had all my paperwork. We signed all the papers. They gave me the keys. They started pairing up my app on my phone to the car. So I didn't get the impression that they did not want to sell me the car and they sold it to somebody else. I didn't get that impression either. So I don't want to accuse them of that. The obvious factual thing is they had a broken process. I'm a legitimate person with all of my ID and documentation in order, and their process failed, and I paid the price. That's where they went wrong, and that's the facts. Now, everything else is gray area, and I can't. I'm not like trying to give their business a hard time for stuff that's not a fact. So dealing with the facts, that's what they are, and that's what happened. So if you guys have thoughts on it, definitely drop me a comment. I did get a call from the BMW dealership in Columbus, Ohio. They're going to try to get me an M2 before Christmas. So big shout out to Steve Johnson at BMW of Dublin, Midwestern Auto Group. He gave me a call. I'll see if I'll get permission from him to see if I can put that call on YouTube, and you guys can see what car we're going to bring in place of this Supra. So stay tuned.